So Margaret has already introduced me. I'm Yogesh Agrawal. I lead the data center GPU business for NVIDIA. And prior to NVIDIA, I was in the storage world. I held leadership roles at EMC, HP, Symantec, and Veritas. So my goal today is to give you a little bit of a perspective on NVIDIA and then share with you how AI is actually transforming various industry. So let me get started by introducing NVIDIA to you. I know you probably know NVIDIA, who it is, but I still want to demystify NVIDIA a little bit. When I talk to my friends, many of them think NVIDIA is just a gaming company. A larger population out there actually thinks NVIDIA is the GPU computing company. I would actually say none of that is a correct characterization of NVIDIA is. NVIDIA today is the leader in AI. The world's AI actually runs on NVIDIA. We have the leading platform for AI, and there are about 40,000 customers that use this platform today. We have a very rich ecosystem out there that builds on this platform. There is an ecosystem of over 15,000 startups, and it continues to grow at a very rapid pace for us that are building on this platform. We have over 4 million developers that build on this platform. And not just that, I know many of you may care about sustainability and green energy. So this is one of the greenest platform out there as well. So when you look at the top 500 list, they published was also the green supercomputer list. Within that, you'll find that the top 22 of those supercomputers are powered by NVIDIA, including the number 1. Now, why is that? Because when you move from, take a large language model as an example. If you were to build the infrastructure for a large language model on CPU-based infrastructure versus GPU, you would use 95% less servers. And so that results in less power, less floor space, and all that. That results in that kind of power savings, which makes it green, okay? But let's go a little deeper into that platform itself. What makes this platform unique are several things. The first thing to explain is that we take a full stack approach to solving any kind of AI use case problem, right? So there are 3 layers in this stack that I want you to understand on the left side. At the very bottom layer of the stack is our hardware and infrastructure layer. The reason I mentioned that we are not just a GPU company, the first reason is because at that layer, we don't just have a GPU. We just launched a CPU called our Grace ARM-based CPU. We also acquired Mellanox, which gives us a data processing unit, a DPU. Now, why is that important? Because all these 3 chips need to work together in concert to handle modern applications effectively, okay? That's the first layer. The next layer up, you can almost think of it as an operating system layer or a layer of essential software suite that you need to do some domain on top of this platform. Okay, so for example, if you want to do AI, you would use NVIDIA AI Enterprise software from NVIDIA. If you are doing high performance computing, you would use NVIDIA HPC. If you are doing visual computing, you would use NVIDIA's Omniverse. Just a small digression I want to take to illustrate this a little bit, because we are talking about multiple domains. We are an accelerated computing platform company, which is not the same as an accelerator. There are many companies out there who would say, hey, I'm going to accelerate one thing. That's an accelerator. In an accelerated computing platform, you have the ability to host multiple domains and run on it, which is what I'm illustrating with the middle layer here, where you can host high-performance computing, visual computing, AI on the same thing. And then on top of that, we don't stop there. We then go all the way close to your use cases and solve them and provide frameworks to enable that. For example, second from the right there is a framework called Metropolis. Yeah, that's the one. So Metropolis is our framework for computer vision applications. What do I mean by framework? It's not just an SDK. We actually, for computer vision applications, we go and understand the entire ecosystem to go solve that for some verticals. We build relationships with relevant ISVs, with systems integrators. We build pre-trained models. All of that is available within that framework for you to go run with it. Same thing for robotics. We have something called ISAC. For self-driving vehicles, we have something called Drive. For conversational AI, we have something called Nemo, right? So what we are doing is for each of these use cases, we are getting very close to it and trying to solve it. So that's the first thing that makes our platform unique. It's a full stack approach. The second thing that makes us unique, which I touched on a little bit, is data center scale computing. Modern applications are not limited to a single server. They span at a data center scale. They span multiple servers. And so your ability to handle east-west traffic across those servers becomes important, where the DPU becomes very important. The CPU, GPU communication is very important. So we are actually solving this at a data center scale. And that complexity, with the growth in complexity of large language models, only continues to rise. The third thing that makes us unique is that whether you are using one of our embedded GPUs like a Jetson GPU or our higher-end GPUs like H100, it's the same architecture. So developers need to learn it only once. And then the final thing that makes us unique is this platform unique is that the same architecture then extends from the data center to the cloud to the edge, okay? So that's all I'm going to share about NVIDIA, right? So this is just a quick overview of NVIDIA for you. Now, this platform and AI technologies ultimately matter to us as humans when we experience it in the real world, when you are using it in a car, in a robot, on your phone, and so on. And so what I hope to do in the rest of my presentation is to give you a little bit of a perspective of how that transformation is happening in various industries. Now, a few months ago, actually when ChatGPT was launched, Jensen referred to it as the iPhone moment of AI, okay? I want to just like peel that a little bit for you, why he said that. If you look at NVIDIA's journey in AI, we started with cloud providers like Amazon, Google, Apple, and so on, because they were the first to build AI-based models for conversational AI, for computer vision, recommendation systems, content moderation, and so on. Next to adopt were consumer internet companies like Twitter, Snap, TikTok in China, and so on. But if you look at core adoption of AI in enterprises in various verticals, it was actually minimal, I would say. Now, but that changed with the launch of ChatGPT. Why? Because ChatGPT has awakened the world to the world of generative AI. What is generative AI? It essentially now gives you the ability to work with any kind of device and interact it in a human-like manner. And what the device can now do is tap into a huge knowledge base behind it and give you the answers that you're looking for and act on any instructions that you're providing it. If it's a robot, it can act on that. So this has huge implications. This is a completely new computing platform, the way PC or internet or cloud or mobile was. In fact, it has bigger implications than any of these computing platforms out there. So that's the first thing ChatGPT did. It has awakened the world to this massive potential of productivity. The second thing that it has done is that every single industry is now thinking about AI, right? So AI has become mainstream, and that's what I'm going to share with you in the rest of this talk. So let me start with automotive as an industry. If you think of the future car is going to be software defined and AI powered. Now, why is that the case? Because we all want from our cars the same kind of experience that we get from our phone. And to give you that kind of an experience, you need for that car to be AI powered and software defined. To understand that, let's actually think about the use cases that an auto manufacturer wants to go enable in this segment. The first one, the obvious one, is self-driving vehicles. Tesla Motors is ahead of the pack here because you know millions of customers are now willing to pay software subscriptions to Tesla Motors to have a self-driving vehicle. That's number one. Second is the customer journey. It's not just enough to have an experience when you are inside the car. Your journey from buying the car to servicing the car, everything can be AI enabled. And I'm going to show you that in a video after this slide as to how generative AI can transform that customer experience. The biggest potential of generative AI is to transform customer experience in various verticals. The third area is connected cars and service. So think of any application that involves ingress and egress of data from a car. That's an opportunity for an auto manufacturer to make more money. You can almost visualize a future where you drive your car into a service station, it gets auto scanned, and then it figures out what needs servicing in the car, right? So that's the third area. And the fourth area is digital twins for factory automation. For a car manufacturer, downtime is very costly. Throughput is very important to them. Ford, for example, produces an F-150 every 53 seconds. If they can reduce that by just a single second, it translates into hundreds of millions of dollars of savings for them, right? So these are the use cases that are top of mind in this segment. Now, to realize these use cases, you need AI models that can iterate quickly, right? How can you iterate quickly unless you're software defined, unless you bring the power of AI? So that's why the car needs to be AI powered and software defined. A few more insights I want to share from our work in this industry. The first one, if it's not obvious already, is all these use cases at the edge or in the factory, they need a bigger brain behind it. You need a supercomputer to train and power these models. You cannot be a leader in AI without being a leader in AI infrastructure. And so one of the leading car companies, they actually have a supercomputer with over 7,000 GPUs that they're publicly stated that they're using to power these use cases. The second insight that I would like to share with you is that over the lifetime of vehicles for a typical car manufacturer, they're going to generate exabytes of data. I think it's 18 exabytes of data that they're going to generate. But the training is not going to be on that much data. The training will be 50 to 60 terabytes of data, which means your ability to curate the data and understand what is truly important becomes very, very key. And then you don't want to train your car on actual roads all the time. You want to train it in simulation with synthetic data, right? So these are, I'm just giving you the high point and takeaways from our work in some verticals. So let's actually look at the impact of generative AI in this industry with a video.
Hi.
Hi, I'm TJ, and you can ask me about cars.
I caught a flat on the front driver's side wheel of my 2022 Cadillac XT5. I got out the spare, but it doesn't seem to fit on the front axle. Can you help me?
The original spare tire and wheel does not fit onto the front axle if equipped with the performance brake package. If there is a flat tire on the front axle, a tire or wheel from the rear axle must be used to make the repair.
Where can I find that information in the manual?
On page 358.
What is the safe driving speed with the spare tire?
The vehicle driving speed with the spare tire installed should be no faster than 50 miles per hour.
Thanks, TJ.
You are welcome. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Yes, I'm interested in the car. Show me a wide-angle view of a 2022 red Corvette with black matte wheels parked in front of a gray house.
Sure. I will generate the image for you.
Show me a wide-angle view of a 2022 Corvette on a winding coastal road at sunset.
Sure.
Show me a Corvette driving through a city at night. Thanks, TJ.
You are welcome.
So what I want to emphasize three things that you saw in that video. The first part of the video actually showed you how you can take your entire knowledge base, your manuals and everything, and give a powerful generative AI front end to it, right? We actually verified the manual, page numbers and all that were correct. The second part of the video actually shows you how generative AI, particularly with imaging AI, can transform your buying experience through generation of images. There was a third aspect of the video which was probably less obvious, but this is a Toy Jensen, which is the avatar of NVIDIA CEO. And you could, all this, when you see his lips kind of matching what he's saying, is based on a technology called audio to face, which is part of our Omniverse product, right? So all of these technologies are going to come together to provide you that kind of an experience. But let's switch gear and talk about another segment, retail. In retail, we actually see engagement happening on 4 areas. The first one is what I would call intelligent stores. And intelligent stores, there are a set of use cases that you can realize today, and there are a set of use cases that are for the future. What can be realized today is based on computer vision, which is used for things like preventing stock out situations, doing store analytics, avoiding mis-scanning of items on self-checkout counters, preventing theft, and so on. Okay? And there are ISVs like Everseen, AWM, Radius AI, who are working with us to go enable all this. What can be realized in the future is to build a digital twin of the store to really understand the optimal store layout to drive to drive higher revenue and optimal shopping experiences for people, right? So that's the first one. The second use case is intelligent supply chain, because if you think of a warehouse that Amazon has, the throughput and the ability for them to really handle the distribution effectively is super important to them. So this can be transformed with technologies like Omniverse, digital twins, robotics, and so on. So that is the intelligent supply chain. Omnichannel engagement is super important for this segment because you have the brick and mortar stores, but when people are actually on websites or having an online experience, the things like recommendation engines can be very powerful in making sure that they are getting very relevant search results and having a great shopping experience there. And finally, we are seeing great traction in what's called intelligent quick service restaurants. So companies like McDonald's want to make sure that they can bring conversational AI and an avatar who can take your orders and then streamline that whole operation, right? And also save on labor costs along the way. So these are the 4 areas where we see work happening in retail. But I want to focus on a few insights from our engagement in this vertical. First of all, in retail, margins are very, very thin. Your ability to forecast demand and supply accurately can be the difference between you being profitable or you being in a loss, right? So that's a very important element of applying AI and doing store analytics correctly. Second, if you look at a store, say, which a typical retail store will spend about 1.4% of their total revenue goes towards shrinkage. And out of that, 65% goes in theft, which is just lost. So think of a company that, say, has $100 billion in revenue. That means $1.4 billion is in shrinkage, out of which $900 million is going into theft. So using AI, applying AI, computer vision based AI, you can actually save that $900 million. The kind of investment required to save that is in $10, $15 million, right? So the ROI is huge in this segment. And the final thing to keep in mind as you are selling into this segment is there needs to be a tighter alignment at the CXO suite, because somebody like the GM or the CEO or the CFO cares about margins, but the CIO is the one who has to do the technology rollout, and these executives need to be in tight alignment, right? So those are some insights that I wanted to share with you from the retail segment. Let me discuss energy. I know in Brazil, energy would be relevant, so I just thought I would talk about it a little bit. If you think about the grid today, that the grid is changing. It used to be that consumption was distributed and production was centralized. And depending on change in consumption of energy, you could change production from a centralized place and you could manage it. You could, if you think of meters used to be manual in nature, read by humans, mostly designed to understand consumption patterns. Now, but when you look at it today, the grid is actually getting decentralized. So let's actually understand this decentralized nature first by looking at the production side of it, which is not just centralized anymore. Why? Because we have renewable energies. It can come from wind, it can come from solar, it can come from batteries. Like there are various ways in which we are now generating, storing, and sharing that energy, which is changing the landscape on the production side. If you look at the consumer side of things, We have electric vehicles. When you plug in your electric vehicle for charging, it puts equivalent of 3 AC units of power into that grid. And the US government wants our cars to be more electric, right? So there is the percentage of electric vehicles will continue to go up, which is going to put a load on the grid, which means this grid needs to be balanced. And to balance it effectively, you have to analyze the data across the grid all the way from transmission to distribution, like across the grid you have to do that. And so that requires you to take frequent data measurements across the grid. You want to install smart meters, not dumb meters at home, which can actually understand the energy consumption patterns at the home as well. So that is the where this energy sector is headed. Again, a few insights I would like to share with you. First of all, this is a distributed edge problem, and context matters depending on where on the edge you are. For example, you could be dealing at edge at the home, you could be dealing at a city level, or you could be dealing at the level of that wind farm. At home, you may be more worried about understanding the consumption pattern of when that person comes home, when does he charge his car, when does he do his laundry, and so on. But at a wind farm, you are worried about hyperscale models like that example of automotives that I gave, where you are trying to understand wind patterns and cloud covers, and you have to model things at that level. So that's a distributed edge problem where context is very, very important. And then finally, you have to think about cyber attacks. Like earlier this year, there were attacks in the Carolinas. So making sure that the right kind of security updates are actually published to the grid timely becomes very key. Let's talk telecommunications. In telecommunications, if you look at telcos, they have been connectivity providers, and they are under tremendous pressure now to switch from just being a connectivity provider to being providers of platforms-based services and solutions. So we actually see telcos working with us in 3 areas. The first one is they want to drive costs out of their business using generative AI. Because the big promise of generative AI is in transforming customer experience. If you look at telcos, they have a huge amount of call centers. And the agent efficiency in these call centers can be transformed by bringing in generative AI, by bringing in that whole knowledge base. The example that you show in auto applies to the telecommunications segment. And you want to make sure that those agents can drive faster resolution of network problems as well. So the issue of customer transformation and diagnosing and solving network problems are linked. Okay, so that is the first area, driving costs out using generative AI. Second, if you look at the major spend of a telco, it's in their networks. And where these companies are coming and working with NVIDIA is actually on our networking portfolio, where they say, hey, I want to cloudify my network. I want to drive more utilization. I want to make my network simpler, but I want to maintain the same level of security there as well. So what they can do is they can take our Bluefield DPUs and offload things from the CPU onto the DPU, things like virtualization, storage, and so on. When they do that, they actually can drive 30% more energy into that whole infrastructure, energy efficiency. And so that takes costs out for them. And what they also achieve in the way is there is a separation between the host layer and the rest of the infrastructure stack. What that gives them is better security, right? So that's the second area where telcos are working with us. And the third area is telcos as regional cloud service providers. If you look at what's happening with Gen AI and large language models, everybody wants data center capacity where they can have accelerated computing, where they can have access to that compute infrastructure. But it's very difficult for the traditional cloud service providers to stand up capacity in that fast a manner. That is leading to an emergence of regional cloud service providers. Okay? Now, telcos are very suited to address this problem because they already have access to power, which is a precious commodity, data center space. Many of them are national champions, right? So they can actually go build out this infrastructure. They have point of presence closer to the customer. So as this landscape shifts from training to inferencing for AI, they can actually provide inferencing closer to where the customer is. So the third area for telecommunications is telcos operating as regional cloud service providers, right? There's a ton of interest in this area. And the final segment I just want to talk about is healthcare. So in healthcare, first of all, if you look at hospitals, they are under pressure to drive costs out, to drive better patient care. They're like smart hospitals are using AI now to constantly detect and monitor patient activity to make sure that there is no patient fall and all that. But what I thought I would talk about is today is the medical instrument industry. It's a $250 billion industry that is getting transformed by AI. What if you look at traditional medical instruments, they are highly regulated. It takes about somewhere between 2 to 5 years to actually update the software on a medical instrument. And because it takes so long, the focus in this industry has been on just monetizing whatever is already there in the instrument rather than actually going and updating it. And so at NVIDIA, what we have first of all been doing is we have been working with over 400 instrument customers. These can span all the way from imaging customers who are doing X-rays and CT scans and so on, to pathology instruments, to surgical instruments and so on. So speaking of surgery, Medtronic, who is a leader in this space, they made an announcement that they will be working with NVIDIA in order to build a software-defined instrument. Okay, so this is like, think of software as a medical device. So the areas in which they will be working with, these instruments will be focused on guided surgeries or AI-assisted surgery and so on. One of the instruments they are going to announce later this year is called GI Genius, which is for early detection of colon cancer. Now, what are some of the key things that we have learned here? First of all, these medical instrument companies do not need to reinvent the wheel the entire time. They can get a base level hardware and software platform from NVIDIA to get started. This is what Medtronic did with us. The second thing is they need to focus on where their core competency is and where they can add differentiation. They don't need to focus on the hardware and the sensors and all that. Medtronic, what they're doing is they are focused on exposing APIs on that instrument so that an ecosystem can go build on top of those APIs. And so that's where you become software as a medical device, right? And you enjoy SaaS type valuations, not 2x valuations as a hardware device, but more like 6x valuations as a SaaS. Some of you will know the valuations better than I do. But that's the trend where we see this industry going. So with that, I'm just going to wrap up with, actually, I have to say one more thing which might be relevant to you guys. So many of you in this audience are entrepreneurs, and you must be wondering, how do I work with NVIDIA? The best way for you to work with NVIDIA is through our Inception Partner Program. I mentioned earlier, we have 15,000 startups in this program. What our startup program does is it gives you access to online courses, it gives you discounted access to hardware, it gives you free cloud credits, you can actually get early access to our products. So there are many, many benefits. One of the things we have is a VC Connect program where we partner with a few VCs so that we can give access to deal flow on our end, okay? And for select startups that are in the program, they can get introductions into the VC, right? So this is a program that is the best. I would recommend this as the primary vehicle with which you should get started in your engagement with NVIDIA. But let me conclude with a few final thoughts that I've touched on in this discussion. Number one is to do AI, you need a full stack approach. Right? I mentioned how NVIDIA operates at 3 layers, hardware, and there is a platform layer, and there is a use case layer. But the thought that I really want to leave you with is the following. You cannot be a leader in AI without being a leader in compute infrastructure. In fact, if you hear Jensen, our CEO, he talks about something called AI factory. I want to explain what an AI factory is. It used to be that software engineers used to write software. But in this new world of generative AI, what you need is an AI factory to which you feed data on one end, and what comes out on the other end is some kind of intelligence that is solving problems for you. So the precious thing is this AI factory. But is this AI factory just a hardware? No. Because what you need to be thinking of the AI factory as the compute infrastructure, the software that goes with it, the data that you're going to feed it, the data scientists that are going to prepare the data, who are going to train the model, and so on. And finally, you need to think about your IT as well. The IT cannot just be about traditional business processes. If you think of NVIDIA's IT, we have a big investment in autonomous vehicles. So our IT is the one who has to provision the infrastructure that is required for us to label the data, provision the infrastructure for all the training that we need to do for autonomous vehicles. The role of IT is going to change. That is what this AI factory is about. But companies, or the companies who we have been working with, who have aspirations to be leaders, are making investments in that AI factory. So that's what I meant by when I said you cannot be a leader in AI without being a leader in compute infrastructure. Thank you. With that, I can take questions.
Fascinating, Yogesh. Thank you so much.
You.
We don't have a lot of time for questions, maybe 8 or 10 minutes, but I want to invite our AI teammate, Vicente Silveira, come up here. Vicente Silveira has led several engineering teams for giant corporations here in the region, and now he is building his own AI company. Vicente.
What's the name of your AI company?
It's V2K.ai.
Oh, cool.
Very nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Very inspiring presentation.
Thank you.
I want to say, actually, our startup, the best spirit of Silicon Valley, we actually have in a garage, an actual garage, a rack with NVIDIA GPUs there, which we're using to actually see if we can offload some of our costs from OpenAI into our own little stack there. So big fan of the company. I was thinking about like two companies or two questions to ask you. We have a mix here of people from investors to startup founders to people from established companies, right? So first, thinking about founders and investors, I think a lot of people are wondering now how much of the pie will be available for startups that will not be as vulnerable to kind of like a winner-take-all effect from the likes of an NVIDIA or an OpenAI or Microsoft or Google, right? So that would be, I think, my first question to you.
Yeah. So if it was not obvious from my presentation already, if you think of somebody like NVIDIA as a company, we are just giving you a platform. Does that platform help you realize the real world use cases? The answer is no. We are actually dependent on thousands of ISVs to go innovate and build on this platform and drive the productivity, right? Because people wonder what will happen because of AI, will I lose jobs? But human evolution shows you that whenever new technologies come in, we find a way to build more productive things and be more and drive that innovation, right? So first of all, we actually expect that innovation across that ISV landscape to grow rapidly, right? So that is my first message to you. That would be the main thing that I would convey. So will there be a small set of companies that are building the foundational models? Yes. But on top of those foundational models, for each of these verticals, you can imagine something that is more vertical specific. So the next layer of innovation is there. And then on top of that, you are doing some other very use case specific innovation. So that's how I see the landscape evolving.
That's great. And maybe I'm going to sneak in. Margarita told me two questions, but I'm going to sneak in like a 1B here. So does, selfishly, but also I think for a lot of the founders here, does NVIDIA have a program for startups that, a lot of like the great founders here can apply here? And of course, help them get off the ground.
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, I talked about our inception. We have over 15,000 companies in that program, okay? So that's one way for you to engage. But I want to take it a little deeper for you. See, NVIDIA goes to market vertically. Even though we have a horizontal platform, we actually have a leader for every single vertical, one for retail, one for manufacturing, one for finance, and so on. It's the responsibility of that leader to go identify the 3 or 4 meaningful needle-moving use cases. Once they have identified that, what they do is then go understand who is innovating, who is the ecosystem that we need to go work with. So if you're a startup in that segment, you will see those leaders reaching out and connecting with you also. So there is a inception program that is out there, but there is also a richer engagement that happens within each vertical for us to work with you. It's a super important priority for us as a company because we know the platform is meaningless without that innovation around us.
That's great. And so my final question for Margaret is a key question. One more? That was the second question. The first one was the 1B. But anyways, for the established companies that are here, right? When you look at AI, especially if you go state of the art, still expensive right now, right? And where do you think it's the type of use case or mindset of this is where probably you should start with AI versus maybe these other types of use cases are maybe later down the road?
It's difficult to answer that question that generically, but let me just say a few things. Because I shared lots of use cases by various verticals. So I've already given you a prioritized view by different verticals. But my advice to you would be the following, because this is what we do at NVIDIA as well. First of all, you should ruthlessly prioritize, right? If there are 5 things you can do, figure out what is the one thing that you can do. Figure out how are you going to determine the product market fit for that one thing. What are the early indicators of success for that one thing and go drive it. This is the way we operate at NVIDIA. We still operate like a startup, and that would be my sincere advice to you if you're an established company. The second thing that I would say, which I think was related to your question, is we have a portfolio of GPUs out there. So it's not like one GPU or one infrastructure that fits everything. For example, if you are trying to do large language model training, you may use our higher end GPU like an H100. But you don't have to train a large language model. You can leverage somebody else's model and fine tune it. If you're just doing fine tuning, we have another GPU which is cheaper, which is L40S. It's an excellent GPU for you to do fine tuning, to train small models, for imaging AI, for you to do graphics and AI and so on. If you're doing something at the edge, you would use something else which is in the 70-watt range. So you kind of touched on the expensive aspect. That's why I wanted to bring it out. So it's also it's related to that prioritization. It's related to your understanding of segmentation and how you segment your workloads and what are you trying to do. And then we can map it to the right thing from our end.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.